Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Terumah. And the Parsha, of course, begins the incredible narrative, the incredible discussion regarding the creation of the Mishkan, the mobile spiritual command center, which served the needs of the Jewish people during our 40-year sojourn in the desert, as well as during the initial chapters of when we come into Eretz Yisrael, the precursor to the Beis HaMikdash, the location, the address, the place where Klal Yisrael met HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the meeting place between heaven and earth. And how does the process of the Mishkan begin? Vaydaber Shema Moshe, or the opening pasuk of the parasha. Dabra b'nei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people. V'yikchuli truma, and take for me a truma, a gift, donations. Me'ez kol ish asher yidvenu libo, from every person whose heart propels him to give. Tikhu es trumasi, take my truma. Beautiful. A fundraiser. Emein kemach ein Torah, emein kemach ein Mishkan. If you want to build a Mishkan, you need money, you need collections, and the Torah then goes on to detail all of the various metals, precious metals, fabrics that have to be collected in order to create a Mishkan. The Mefarshim all pick up on what appears to be an extraneous word. The pasuk could have been written, Dabra b'nei Yisrael, speak to the people, v'yikchu truma, and take truma. But instead it says, v'yikchu li truma, take for me truma. And Rashi HaKadosh says, why the li? Rashi says, li lishmi, for me, for my sake. Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, Moshe Rabbeinu, I don't just want the people to give. I just want them to give. You know, people give for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes they feel because pressure to give, obligation to give. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, anyone who gives to this, I want them to give for me, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want them to give because they recognize the beauty and the value of what it is that they're building. I want them to give because they recognize that this Mishkan will serve as a dramatic place of intimate communion between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. So when they give, I want them to give li, lishmi, for my sake. And the Azayim Torah, Rav Zalman Saratskin, in his Perush on Chumash, says something so beautiful. He quotes, but we have this concept later on. In fact, just a few psukim later, the pasuk says, "Va'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'socham," which is like the overarching obligation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell inside of it. Make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell inside of it." So Rashi again says, once again, it could have just said, "Va'asu mikdash," make a mikdash, make a temple, v'shachanti b'socham, and I will dwell within it. Why the li? Why does that say, "Make for me a temple"? And Rashi again comments over here, Va'asu lishmi, make it for my name. In other words, when you build a Mishkan, and later on when you build the Beis HaMikdash, do it for the right reasons. Do it to create that address, so to speak, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. Do it to create that place of connection. Do it to create that place of community. Li lishmi, don't just build it, but build it with the right kavanas. Have the right intentions when you do it. So asks, the Azayim Torah asks Rav Saratskin, if you're saying it over here, by the overarching obligation of Va'asuli Mikdash, why do you have to say it earlier in the parasha, V'yikhuli Truma? In other words, if you're saying it, the whole mission is to build a Beis HaMikdash, to build a Mishkan. So you're telling me in that commandment, which strives everything else, Va'asuli, make it for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, make it for the right purposes, the right intentions. If you're already expressing it there, then why do you need to express it earlier on in the parasha by V'yikhuli Truma, that the fundraising has to be done, right? The money has to be given for the right purposes as well. Why the redundancy? And Rav Saratskin says something so beautiful. Listen to his words. He says, Mikan, shafilu, ha'achonos lidavar shebekdusha, lo rak ha'asiya atzma, tzarech la'asoson bilti la'ashem levado. The Zalman Torah says, you see something very important over here, which is that when it comes to ultimately, again, creating something holy, it is not only the actual act of holiness, which has to be done with the right kavanas, the right intentions, but ultimately, again, even the preparatory acts, even the preceding acts, even the things, this we'll call it the support activities that lead to the actual culmination, actualization of the actual action of Kedusha, those have to be for the right intentions as well. Those require li lishmi. Those require ultimately, again, the right kavanas. So in other words, what Rav Saratskin is saying is something incredible. It goes without saying that when you're going ahead and building the actual Mishkan, right? Va'asuli mikdash, you're taking the gold, the silver, the copper, the red wool, the blue wool, all the different things. It's clear that when you're making and you're fabricating the utensils, the structures, later on the Kohanic vestments, of course, that is going to be done with the right level of kavanah. that is going to be done for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for a higher purpose, not for ulterior motives, but only for the sake of the Ribono Shel Olam. Rav Saraskin says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to teach us an additional lesson, that even the acts, right, even the things, the supporting activities, which enable you to do those dvarim shebekdusha, those have to be done b'kedusha as well. See, even the fundraising, even the gathering of the gold and the silver and all of the various fabrics, those are support activities. But even those support activities have to be done with the right mindset. Even those support activities have to be done lishmi, for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I think what Rav Saraskin is highlighting to us is something so profound, that in order for something to be holy, to be truly holy, and for the result to possess lasting and enduring holiness, every part of the process has to be holy as well. But to take it one step further, if you look at any act of holiness, any davar shebekdusha, any act of holiness, item of holiness, event of holiness, that event always has preceding supporting events. In order to create something of true Kiddusha, it can't only be the ikar, the primary act of Kiddusha, which is holy, but that which leads up to it, the supporting events, have to be holy as well. You know, you think about this, and I think it resonates with such profundity in our own Judaic life. Sometimes, right, when it comes to davening, so we think that what makes an impactful prayer experience, so opening my siddur, paying attention, right, focusing on the words, not getting distracted. But what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us is to have a meaningful tefillah experience. What are the support activities that are leading you up to that? We know if a person is coming late to davening, so by definition, and this is not like a late to davening shmuz, but I'm saying just logically, if I'm coming late, so I'm already catching up, that means there's no preparation. There's no preceding events. If the preceding events are absent or are not holy, then ultimately, again, the davar shebekdusha itself, the holy item itself, is deficient. So davening without preparation is not going to be a meaningful experience. That's why the Gemara Maseches Brachos says that Hasidim Hashem, the early pious ones, ultimately, again, they used to meditate for an hour before going out and davening, or sha'ach, some amount of time, where they understood that if I want the davening to be meaningful, then the preparatory events, the support events which lead up to it, have to be holy and have to be in place as well. I can't have a va'asuli mikdash without a v'yitnuli truma. A mikdash only happens when the supporting events are there. And just like the mikdash has to be done for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the supporting events, the lead-up events, have to be intact as well. We know it's kind of basic. Coming to a shir, we all know this from our own lives. If I'm sitting and learning, you can't compare the learning experience coming 5 minutes early and being settled in place. I'm ready to go. Versus coming 5 minutes late. Where are we up to? What's going on? So 5 minutes late really translates into 15 minutes of lost time. Why? Because I figure I could just jump into the Va'asuli Mikdash. But it doesn't work that way. The V'yikhuli Truma, the preparation has to be there as well. And it's not just in learning and davening. A person wants to come home and spend time with their family. I think we could all relate to this. Had a stressful day, a really stressful day. So at the end of the day now, so stressed, and you know what happens so often, you walk into the house and your stress just comes with you. So sometimes if I want a va'asuli mikdash moment with my family, what I need to do is at the door before I walk in, inhale and exhale and say, you know what, I'm making a conscious effort to leave the stresses of the day behind and walk into my home just a little bit liberated, right? A little bit stress-free, at least for the half hour, whatever amount of time I'm going to be sitting with my family. If you want that va'asuli mikdash of meaningful family time, you have to have the v'yikhuli truma of preparatory times as well. So often in life, when we don't get what we want out of particular situations, right? How many times I come home for dinner, again, I want to spend time with my family. I don't know, it just didn't feel like the right experience. I davened, but I didn't get anything out of it. I learned, but I don't know, my head wasn't really in it. If we kind of trace back our steps, it's because we jumped right into the Asuli Mikdash, the Davar Shebekdusha, but I didn't have the V'yikhuli Truma. I didn't really have the holy preparation. And without holy preparation, without a v'yikhuli truma, without a preparation that is there for the right intentions, with the right kavanas, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well, the mikdash is built on shaky ground, on shaky foundation. The truth is, we're thinking a lot about this idea because you see this now. Our holy soldiers go into battle each and every day. You know, I guarantee you, I don't know, I've never been in the army, but I would have to imagine that no soldier rolls out of bed, bleary-eyed, like, okay, yeah, let's just go. There's planning. There's a plan. You look at the dramatic and heroic rescue of two of our beautiful brothers this past week, two hostages. The amount of planning, the amount of v'yikhuli truma that must have gone into that, in order to create the Asuli Mikdash of the beautiful result of bringing two Jews home is dramatic. Our soldiers go out to battle, they're not rolling into it. It's not where's Chaim? Where's Chaim Yankel? Where is he? He's just running 5 minutes late. It doesn't, I would assume, it doesn't happen that way. Why? Because an army understands that if you are going to execute the mission, then the preparation has to be in place as well. There's no va'asuli mikdash of beautiful holy results without a pre-planned, coordinated, well thought out v'yikhuli truma of pre-planning as well, of preparations. It doesn't happen. And Chevra, as I've said many times since October 7th, just because many of us are geographically distant and we're not picking up the rifle, we're not donning the uniform, we're still in the army of Klal Yisrael. And each of us has to try to do our part as well. And maybe this is something that we can work on, beginning Parshas Truma. I think many of us find ourselves incredibly proficient in the Asuli Mikdash. I know how to execute the result. What's often missing from my life is the V'yikhuli Truma, the proper planning. I find myself rolling into a lot of things, davening, learning, chesed, family time. And as a result of rolling into it, as a result of not having the li lishmi by the preparations, often the Asuli Mikdash is a little bit deficient as well. Parshas Truma should energize us, not just to focus on the result, but to recognize that if you really want the Mishkan or the Mikdash of accomplishment, it begins with the V'yikhuli Truma. It begins with focusing on a process, devoting myself to a process, devoting myself to planning, and making sure that that planning and those procedures and those processes are done with Kedusha, are done with attentiveness, so that I am able to, Emirat Hashem, reach the pinnacle of accomplishment of the Asuli Mikdash, both in my family life, in my personal life, and in my Kedusha life as well. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.